The night everything fell apart. I was standing barefoot on a rain-slick sidewalk in Portland, Oregon, holding a suitcase that wasn't even mine. The wheels were broken. One zipper was stuck halfway open. A stranger's hoodie hung out of the top like an insult. Behind me, through the fogged glass of the apartment I had lived in for almost a decade, I could still hear the music. Bass pounding, laughter. Someone shouting, "Finally free!" That someone was Ethan Blake, the man I had been with for 9 years. 9 years. No ring, no wedding date, no someday. Just 1,000 little promises that never hardened into anything real. I'm Rachel Monroe. I was 35 years old that night, and I was being cheered out of my own life. Ethan had called it a freedom party. That should have been my first clue. He invited friends from work, old college buddies, even people I barely knew, all to celebrate, apparently, the moment he decided he was done pretending. I didn't even realize the party was for me until he handed me the suitcase. "Here," he said, smiling like this was a favor. I packed the essentials. He slipped a folded $50 bill into my hand like a tip. Then, in front of everyone, he opened the door, nudged my shoulder, and said loudly enough for the room to hear, "Time to start your next chapter, Rachel." People clapped. Someone popped champagne, and the door closed behind me. I stood there for a full minute, staring at my reflection in the glass, mascara streaked, hair frizzed from the rain, still wearing the heels I'd put on for what I thought was just another Friday night. I didn't scream. I didn't bang on the door. I didn't beg. I walked. I walked 3 blocks to the only thing still legally in my name, my late grandmother's 2009 Toyota Corolla, parked under a dying streetlight. The rain turned icy as I drove. Portland rain always feels personal, like it's testing how much more you can take. I didn't know where else to go. So I drove south, across the bridge, toward Lake Oswego, to my parents' house. It was almost 2:30 a.m. when I rang the doorbell. My clothes were soaked through. My hands were numb. My phone battery was at 8%. The porch light flicked on. My father, Richard Monroe, opened the door just enough to see me. He didn't invite me in. He looked down at my suitcase, then at my face, and sighed. Not with concern, but irritation. "Rachel," he said, like I'd interrupted something important. "What is this?" "I need help," I said. My voice cracked on the word need. "Ethan kicked me out. I just need a place to sleep." Behind him, my mother, Carolyn, stood in the hallway with her arms crossed. She didn't say a word. My younger sister, Lena, leaned against the staircase, chewing gum. Dad shook his head slowly. "You made your choices." "I was with him for 9 years," I said. "I helped pay that rent. You chose not to marry him," my mother cut in. "We warned you." Lena laughed softly. "This isn't a shelter, Rach." The door opened another inch, just long enough for my father to say, "You're a grown woman. Figure it out." Then it closed. The deadbolt clicked. I stood there, shivering, listening to the sound of my family settling back into their warm, lit house. I don't remember how long I stood on that porch. I just remember reaching into my coat pocket, fingers numb, searching for my keys, and feeling something unfamiliar. Plastic, smooth, worn. A silver debit card. I pulled it out under the porch light. The name printed on it made my breath hitch. Eleanor May Monroe, my grandmother. She had slipped that card into my hand 16 years earlier, right before she died, along with a tiny folded note. "Only use this when you truly have no one else." I had laughed back then. Told her she was being dramatic. Standing on my parents' porch, locked out in the rain, I wasn't laughing anymore. I figured maybe there was $20 left on it, enough for gas, maybe a cheap motel. I drove. I slept that night in my Corolla, parked behind a grocery store on Southwest Barber Boulevard, curled under my coat, listening to rain drum against the roof. When I woke up, the windshield was fogged white. My back hurt. My phone was at 3%. I drove to the nearest bank branch, a U.S. bank I'd passed 1,000 times and never thought twice about. Inside, the air smelled like burnt coffee and disinfectant. My hands were shaking when I slid the card across the counter. The teller frowned, swiped it once, then again. Her face drained of color. "Ms. Monroe," she said quietly, "could you come with me, please?" She didn't take me to the manager's desk. She took me to a small office, closed the door, and turned her monitor toward me. The number on the screen didn't make sense. I stared at it, convinced my eyes were wrong. The teller spoke slowly, like she was afraid I might bolt. "Your grandmother placed assets into an irrevocable trust in the late 1990s. You are listed as the sole beneficiary." My heart started pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. "The liquidity account linked to this card has never been accessed before," she continued. "The current available balance is..." She paused, then finished the sentence, and my life split cleanly in two. I walked back out into the rain with an envelope tucked under my arm, legs weak, mind spinning. I didn't go back to my parents' house. I didn't call Ethan. I didn't call anyone. Because somewhere between the moment that door slammed shut in my face and the moment that number appeared on that screen, something inside me finally understood the truth I had been avoiding my entire adult life. I wasn't unwanted because I was weak. I was unwanted because I was useful, and I had stopped being useful to them. And for the first time, I realized, if I didn't protect myself now, no one ever would. I didn't tell anyone what I'd seen on that screen. Not my parents, not my sister, not even myself. Not out loud. I drove straight to a cheap extended stay hotel near Tigard, paid for one night with my own debit card, and sat on the edge of the bed staring at the beige wall like it might start talking first. My phone buzzed non-stop. Missed calls, texts, voicemails stacking up like unpaid bills. From my mother. "Rachel, please call us. We were worried sick. Your father didn't mean it like that." From my father. "Come home. We need to talk like adults." From Lena. "Don't be dramatic. Mom's crying." I turned the phone face down. Less than 12 hours earlier, they had locked me out in the rain. Now they were worried sick. That was my first real warning. By noon, curiosity and fear won. I drove back to Lake Oswego. The porch light was on. The front door was open. That alone should have told me everything. My mother rushed me the second I stepped inside, arms wrapping around my shoulders, perfume heavy, voice trembling. "Oh, honey, we didn't sleep at all," she said. "Why didn't you call?" My father stood behind her, eyes soft, posture relaxed. The version of him strangers loved. "We said some harsh things," he admitted. "We were shocked, scared. Parents make mistakes." Lena appeared at the bottom of the stairs, hair perfectly done, wearing leggings and a cropped sweater like she'd planned this entrance. "Let's just reset," she said brightly. Okay? They guided me into the living room like I was fragile glass, fresh coffee on the table, my favorite blueberry muffins, still warm. My mother kept touching my arm, my hair, my cheek, like she needed proof I was solid, real, still hers. I hadn't even sat down before my father said it. Mason called. My stomach dropped. He said you went to the bank this morning, Dad continued carefully. Something about Grandma Eleanor? My mother pressed a tissue to her eyes. We always thought she spent everything on medical bills. Lena leaned forward, smiling. Guess Grandma had secrets. No one asked how much. No one asked if I was okay. They were already rearranging the story. That afternoon blurred into something almost convincing. Apologies, soft voices, carefully chosen words. At dinner, my father poured wine and sighed deeply, like a man carrying too much responsibility. Rachel, he said, you know how complicated money can be, especially family money. My mother nodded. We only want to protect you. Lena reached across the table and squeezed my hand. We're a team, always have been. I wanted to believe them. God help me. I really did. The paperwork appeared the next morning. My father set a thick folder on the dining table, blue-backed, clipped neatly. We had our attorney draw something up, he said casually. Just a formality. I flipped the cover. Limited power of attorney. Appointment of co-trustees. The language was dense, legal, suffocating. You stay the owner, Dad assured me. We just help manage things. Taxes, investments, big picture decisions. My mother smiled. So you don't have to carry this alone. Lena added softly, it's smart. Rich people do this all the time. I kept reading. Buried beneath friendly phrasing were words that made my pulse spike. Irrevocable. Assignment of beneficial interest. Unanimous consent required. Control. Not help. Control. I looked up. Why does this say I can't access funds without co-trustee approval? Dad waved it off. Standard protection language. Why are you listed as chair? I asked. He chuckled. Someone has to coordinate. The pen sat on top of the folder, waiting. The pressure didn't come all at once. It came in shifts. Dad with spreadsheets, red numbers, arrows, graphs showing how his consulting firm had been struggling since COVID. Mom with stories about Grandma, how she would have wanted the family united. Lena with tears, talking about her rent, her boyfriend threatening to leave, her credit cards maxed. We're drowning, Rach, she sobbed one afternoon, face buried in my shoulder. You're the only one who can save us. Every meal ended the same way. The folder placed gently in front of me, the pen nudged closer. On the third night after dessert, Dad slid it across the table again. Just sign, he said softly, and everything goes back to normal. Something inside me snapped. I'm not signing. The silence was immediate, violent. Dad's face hardened. A vein pulsed at his temple. Lena's tears vanished like a switch had been flipped. You're seriously going to let us lose everything? She hissed. My mother's voice shot up. After everything we did for you? Dad slammed his hands on the table. Glasses rattled. Fine, he said coldly. We'll handle this another way. My stomach dropped. We'll go to court, he continued. Challenge the trust. Prove Grandma wasn't competent. Lena leaned in, eyes sharp. Lawyers are expensive, Rachel. You'll bleed money before this is over. Mom sobbed loudly. How can you do this to your own mother? I stood so fast my chair scraped the floor. I'm done. I walked out while they were still shouting. Dad followed me to the porch, yelling about blood and loyalty and regret. Lena screamed from the doorway. You're dead to me! I locked myself in my car and drove. By the time I checked into another extended stay hotel, this one closer to downtown, my phone was exploding. Not just from them, from cousins, aunts, people I hadn't spoken to in years. Someone had posted in the family Facebook group. Rachel came into money and turned her back on her parents. The comments were brutal, ungrateful, greedy. Karma's coming. Strangers sent laughing emojis, called me names. I lay on the hotel bed staring at the ceiling, heart pounding, chest tight. 3 days ago, I had nothing. Now everyone wanted a piece of me. And the moment I refused to hand it over, love turned to venom. That was my point of no return. Because if I signed that paper, I wouldn't just lose the money. I would lose myself. And deep down, I knew it. The FedEx envelope arrived 3 days later. It was waiting at the front desk of the extended stay hotel when I came back from a sleepless walk along the Willamette River, coffee gone cold in my hand. My name was typed neatly on the label. No return address. I knew who it was from before I touched it. Inside my room, I locked the door, flipped the deadbolt, and pulled the curtains shut. I sat on the edge of the bed for a long moment, listening to my own breathing. Then I tore the envelope open. Hundreds of pages spilled out onto the comforter. Court filings, billing statements, medical affidavits, email chains printed single-spaced. Every page carried the same header. In re Eleanor May Monroe Irrevocable Trust. My grandmother hadn't just planned for my future. She had been defending it for decades. The first document that made my stomach drop was a phone log, time-stamped the same night my sister had heard about the bank. Outgoing call from my father's cell phone to a law firm in downtown Portland. Duration, 51 minutes. Billing entry attached. Emergency consultation regarding trust intervention. Client reports beneficiary accessed funds. My hands went cold. I kept flipping. In 2003, my parents had filed a petition claiming my grandmother lacked mental capacity when she created the trust. Dismissed. The judge had ordered them to pay legal fees. In 2009, they tried again, this time arguing I was financially immature and needed guardianship once I turned 18. The judge's handwritten note was scanned and attached. Disappointment in inheritance is not legal incompetence. Denied with prejudice. In 2016, another attempt. A psychiatrist's affidavit claiming my grandmother showed signs of cognitive decline, based on a 15-minute phone interview. The doctor later lost his license for falsifying reports. Case dismissed. Sanctions threatened. My family had spent years trying to crack that trust, while Grandma was alive, while she was dying, while I was growing up thinking love was conditional. And the moment they learned the number, they did it again. The newest filing was still warm from the printer, an emergency motion requesting a freeze on all distributions, claiming I was being unduly influenced, claiming I was emotionally unstable, claiming my 9-year relationship with Ethan proved a pattern of poor judgment. My sister had already signed a declaration. My mother's was drafted and ready. My father had wired a 6-figure retainer that same week. I sat there, surrounded by paper, heart hammering, and finally understood something with terrifying clarity. They didn't see me as a daughter. They saw me as a vault, and they were furious they didn't have the key. That night, I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't call anyone. I made a decision. If they wanted war, I would not fight it emotionally. I would fight it correctly. The next morning, I called a private attorney my grandmother had trusted for years. His office overlooked the river, all glass and quiet power. He didn't waste time with sympathy. He slid a thick folder toward me. "Your grandmother was airtight," he said calmly. "Irrevocable. Spendthrift provisions. No contest clause. Ironclad." I swallowed. "They're trying again." He nodded. "We expected that." Then he leaned forward. "But Rachel, they've made mistakes." He turned the folder. Inside were financial records tied to my father's consulting firm. Shell entities, unexplained transfers, tax irregularities. "They've been moving money sloppily," he said, "for years." I felt my pulse in my ears. "Are you saying—" "I'm saying," he interrupted gently, "that defending yourself doesn't have to mean just blocking them." I walked out of that office with a flash drive in my pocket and my hands shaking. The plan didn't happen overnight. It happened methodically, quietly. I hired a forensic accountant under an LLC registered out of state, paid with cashier's checks. No paper trail back to me. He produced a report thick enough to stop a door. Fake invoices, circular payments, income laundered through relatives' accounts. It wasn't just unethical, it was criminal. I added the trust history, every false claim, every dismissed petition, every dollar spent trying to steal from my grandmother. When it was done, I sat on the floor of my hotel room, surrounded by evidence, and felt something unfamiliar settle in my chest. Not rage, resolve. I mailed the packages on a Tuesday night, 2 padded envelopes, one addressed to the IRS whistleblower office, one to federal investigators. No fingerprints, no return address. Then I waited. I didn't warn my family. I didn't confront them. I disappeared. Because the most powerful move I'd learned was this: silence terrifies people who think they still control the narrative. 62 days later, my phone buzzed in the cereal aisle of a grocery store. Every phone around me buzzed, too. Breaking news. I looked up at the screen, and my knees nearly gave out. The news alert didn't even need sound. I knew something was wrong the moment every phone in the grocery store lit up at once. That sharp collective inhale, carts stopping mid-aisle, strangers turning their screens outward. I looked down at mine. Breaking. Federal agents raid Monroe consulting offices in Lake Oswego. There was live helicopter footage, black SUVs, windbreakers with yellow letters, boxes carried out in rows. And there, standing on the sidewalk in front of the building I'd been inside 100 times growing up, was my father, hands zip-tied behind his back, head bowed. For a moment, my brain refused to process it. This was the man who taught me how to ride a bike, who lectured me about responsibility, who slammed his hands on the table and told me I was selfish. Now, a female agent was reading him his rights. I set my basket down. I walked out of the store. I sat in my car and let the engine run while the world caught up to the truth. The indictment was unsealed within hours. Wire fraud, money laundering, tax evasion, conspiracy. 14 years, millions of dollars. Every corporate account frozen before noon. By that evening, seizure notices were taped to the doors of my parents' house. My mother watched from behind the curtains. My sister's husband filed for divorce the following Monday morning. Emergency custody, financial misrepresentation cited. By the end of the week, the family group chat was gone. No apologies, no explanations. Just silence where certainty used to be. I didn't go home. I didn't show up to court. I didn't say a word publicly. I watched from a distance as everything collapsed under its own weight. Friends disappeared. Invitations stopped. Doors closed quietly, the same way mine once had. The sentencing happened on a gray February morning. I sat in the back row of the courtroom wearing glasses I didn't need, hair dyed darker, coat collar turned up. No one recognized me. When the judge asked my father if he wished to speak, he shook his head. The sentence was read clearly. Years, restitution, forfeiture. The gavel fell. He never looked back. Life didn't suddenly become perfect after that. It became quiet. I bought a small condo under an LLC. 2 bedrooms, hardwood floors, a balcony that caught the morning light. I adopted a rescue dog named Penny. I slept through the night for the first time in years. The trust remained untouched, exactly as my grandmother intended. But I did something different with the income. I invested in affordable housing, funded scholarships through a local foundation, paid off student loans for women who reminded me of myself. Not because I had to, because I wanted to. Because freedom tastes different when it isn't forced out of you. I visited my grandmother's grave on a cold morning 18 months later. Snow dusted the stone. I brushed it clean and stood there longer than I meant to. She had seen this coming, all of it. And instead of trying to save everyone, she saved the one person who never asked, me. Here's what I learned, and what I want every woman watching this to hear. Family is not a contract that entitles people to own you. Love that disappears the moment you say no was never love. And money doesn't change people, it reveals them. If the people who are supposed to protect you lock the door when you're at your lowest, believe them the first time. Walk away. Build the life they told you you didn't deserve. Because the greatest revenge isn't destruction, it's peace, it's safety. It's becoming the woman no one can ever push out again. And I promise you this, that kind of freedom is worth everything.